this a lot together anyway,
Yes.
over multiple phone calls. So I know the brief version of your story and how this came about and the burnout that was linked to your story. But I want to just give you the chance to tell your story, because I think it's something that people will hopefully just sit and realize, okay, this actually could happen to me, because I feel
Yes.
like it's so easy to detach yourself from these things and
Yes.
consequences of burnout, because you think, and I know that you're going to speak about this, but you do think this is, it won't happen to me. This does happen, but not to me.
Yes. So look, I guess let me give you a little bit of background on me. So look, I've been in the IT sector for 25 plus years or thereabouts, right? And I've spent most of my career in the financial services sector. So my current role I'm a client manager for a company called Associated British Foods within their shared IT services division. Prior to that, I was global head of IT for a consultancy firm. And before that, I was CTO of a hedge fund. And then prior to that, it's been investment bankings and hedge funds, again, in IT roles, right? Now, one thing I will say is that, from a young age, I've always been into IT, getting myself into the city, into the hustle and bustle of things straight after university was such a buzz, right? It was brilliant. I would say that in my early years, and I say early years, it wasn't early years really, it kind of extended out, right?
Yeah.
Where I loved work. I loved work, but why I loved work wasn't just because of work. It was the people around me. It was the social element of it, right? So if I give you an example, when I was at Credit Suisse, right, some of my dear friends were the people I worked with. I even dated, right, people from work, right? so I kept it close, right? I kept it close. And if I think back to those days, I would have times where I would get up in the mornings, go into work, right, get into work for 8:30, 9 o'clock. I'm not normally a early bird, but 8:30, 9 o'clock, I'll be there. Work till 5, 6 o'clock, right? Then go out for drinks with my work colleagues. Then a problem would hit. We'd all go back into the office, right? We'll do a bit more work. And then we'll have supper at work, because again, working at Credit Suisse, I use Credit Suisse as an example, right? But we had a canteen there, right? So we'd eat there. And then we'd go out again for a few more drinks. And then we get a cab home, right? So I'd end up coming home at 1, 2 in the morning, and then it was a cyclic thing, right? Just keep doing it again and again and again. At that point, I never thought about what the consequences of it were, and I was kind of keeping fit in a way, I guess. So you just assume you're healthy, you're okay, right? And so that was what I got into, and I loved work, right? When you talk about do you work to live or live to work, right? I very much lived to work, right? I had the ethos wrong, but that was me. So that was there, and that carried on, right? Because when I moved in through my career, all it meant was, right, and I even used to say to myself, getting paid at the end of the month was like a bonus every month. Right, because I was with colleagues, we weren't spending much, subsidized expenses, all of this kind of stuff came into play, because we were doing probably 13, 14 hours of work, right? And then we'll go out and play, right? But we did, or maybe slightly less, 12 hours, but 12 hours across a week, right? 60 hours in a week, right? But that's how it was. But getting paid at the end was an extra bonus, right? I paid for my mortgage, paid for a bit of time, but that was it. And then as I progressed in my career, it kind of carried on. Right? It just meant that I made different friends, right? Different work colleagues, but I still had that same life. It slightly changed when I had a long-term partner, my wife now, right? Because you're making more life choices, as one might say, right? But even then, we were very fortunate. Now, if you look at it, right, what you've got 2 incomes coming in, right? What does that mean? Well, you have a better life, right? You go out on, you go on holidays, you go on, you know, whereas before I was doing these kind of singleton holidays, or going on holidays with my work colleagues and peers, right? But now I'm going on holiday with my wife and stuff. We were doing nicer holidays, you know. We were doing exotic holidays. We'll do weekend breaks, right? But again, if you think about it, you go away for a weekend, right? What are you doing? You're drinking and eating, right? And you're trying different things, you're trying different cultures, you're stuffing your face full of, you know, if you go to Spain, you're like, oh, local tortilla, oh, it's like made differently, let me try that, you know. Oh, their wine is different, let me try that. So it all kind of builds up, and you don't think about what next. You don't, because you're enjoying the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And there's that line, isn't there, between you want to enjoy it, but then you also do have to think, what are the consequences of this very fast-paced,
you're absolutely right
life?
You're absolutely right. But you don't think of it in the moment.
No.
Right? And you don't, you know, wellness, mindfulness, one's mind, one's, you know, self well-being, you know, all of this kind of stuff has only come about recently, right? And they're right, by the way, they are right. But back then, you know, I thrived on stress, right? For me, I was a problem solver, right? The bigger the problem, the better it was. The adrenaline kicks in.
I mean, that's a testament to you and your character and your work ethic. But obviously there comes a point, and knowing your story as I do, I know that that point is about to come.
Yes.
Where there's, you know, it's a catalyst for something disastrous that's about to happen, really.
Yes. And, you know, does one think that the catalyst was going to happen? Does anyone even realize that there is a catalyst? Does anyone even realize? No. But the one thing I will say is, and again, you know, in my story, in what I'm trying to impart, isn't just saying, look, listen to me, but it's also, hopefully somebody will learn from my stuff, right? One of the things I looked back and I knew was, you know, I looked at my family history, right? So when you turn around and you say, did I know might something like this? And let's qualify this, right? What do I mean by this? So ultimately what I found out was, years later in 2019, I'll tell you my story, which was, I found out that I was having chest pains, didn't think of much of it. My hobby at the time was playing badminton. Every week I'd be playing badminton, and I went and started playing badminton, and I'm like, oh gosh, it's a bit nothing serious, just a discomfort. Didn't take any notice of it for nearly 2 months, right? I just thought it's because I forgot my inhaler, right? Stupid me, what an idiot, you know, carry on, right? But then we were on October half term in 2019. We were away on holiday in Dubai, and you know, the climate was different and it was hot, and I was walking between two shops in a mall quite speedily, and that pain, that discomfort came again. I was like, oh, got to sort it out. Came back, went to the doctors. They said, right, you know, go and get some tests. And then the tests proved that actually two things. One, that my arteries were quite clogged, right? So I needed some intervention. And secondly, I'd had a heart attack in the past. I'd had what's called a silent heart attack, right? And which is very scary, right? Because you know, you just think, oh yeah, okay, nothing more of it. Oh yeah, not a problem. Let me just carry on. But it transpires that was me having a silent heart attack. I kind of pictured roughly when I knew it happened. So what did that mean? Is I ended up having a quadruple heart bypass. And it was scary, right? So when I talk about, you know, what happened, that was what happened for me. So going back kind of thing, you know, at the time, you talk about catalyst. Did I know any of this might happen? I didn't know it would happen. I had an inkling. Why? Because of my family background. So my father had a triple bypass in his early 50s. My mother had a stent put in. She wasn't as dramatic as myself or my father, bless her, but she still had a stent put in. And there's history going back. So there was an inkling. Yeah. But the key thing is, did I do anything different because of that inkling? No. And the only key thing I did do differently, I guess, is I'd worry more about right, what if, do I need to have right insurance? You know, so when I apply for a job and get a job, right, do they have critical illness cover, or do they have you know, all of this, what's the sick benefit? Do you know what I mean? I look at those kind of things. But did I do anything different in my lifestyle? Sadly not. Sadly not. So the catalyst, if you will, was probably staring in the face. Yeah, but I ignored it, right? And that's not a good way to be.
No. And after your surgery, was that the point then that you thought, right, things need to change? You know, this has happened to me. I understand why. How do I move going forward? You know, a lifestyle change would be the first thing on everyone's mind. Did that happen for you?
That's a really interesting thing, because I don't know how you'll take this as an answer, but it's a bit of a yes and a no moment, right? Yeah. Yes, it did, right? Yeah. Look, you know, I'm in hospital. I've got all these, you know, tubes and whatever coming out of me, and I've had this major surgery. I've survived, right? Might I just add, when I was told I had to have this op, right, it didn't sink in, right? That's one point I would like to make, is because I didn't allow myself to actually think about it. I didn't allow myself to actually process that, because why? Guess what? Work was there. I was going through a critical moment in work. I even remember I was still literally the day up until the night before my op. So my op was at 7 a.m. in the morning, right? Yeah. Up until that night. So my wife and I, my surgeon turned around and said, go and have a nice meal, right? Mm-hmm. Relax, right? Up until the moment my wife and I went for that meal, right? I was on my phone. I was on my work emails. Yeah. So work was still kind of suppressed all of those kind of feelings that I should have had about the op. It suppressed it. Now, coming back to your point, did I realize afterwards, you know, what's going on, what my priorities are, all that? Yes, I did, right? Why? Because I couldn't do any work. My work had actually they had turned around and said, Bahi, you've got to switch off, go switch off. And they were great about it, by the way, right? But they said, you've got to switch off. So I kind of did, but I was bored, right? And my mind's now working overtime. I'm processing everything I hadn't processed. And I'm now processing what next? What am I doing, right? Yeah. So at which point you start to think through, what's the mistakes I've made? I've got to exercise more. I've got to do this. I've got to do. And in the person that I am, I wanted to start doing these things. I have no patience, right? Yeah. But I can't. I cannot physically do it. Getting out of bed was painful, right? Mm-hmm. Sleeping was painful. One could turn around and go, how is sleeping painful? Well, listen, when you can't sleep because of pain, I mean, it's painful, right? Yeah. And so these things, you know, I was sitting there going, I need to do things differently. I've got 2 young kids, right? I owe it to them, right? I've got a beautiful wife. I owe it to her, right? I've put her through all of this stress. I owe it to her, right? So these things were going through my mind, and you come up with these, you know, kind of, wow, right, I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to do this differently. But the reality of it is, when you actually put it into motion, right, you miss your old lifestyle. You miss your work colleagues. You miss the buzz that work gave you. You miss that stress that work gave you. You know, all of those things which are really bad for you, right? The going out drinking, right? Yeah. The stress that work caused, right? The I don't know, eating out 3, 4, 5 times a week, right? Because it's all doused in salt and butter and fatty stuff, right? Which we all love, right? All of that good stuff, you start to miss it.
Yeah,
right.
It's an addictive lifestyle, isn't it? I mean, you have hugely. So much fun. It gives you this huge rush of happiness, and it's addictive. Yeah,
it's hugely addictive. And so as much as I was sitting there going, I want to change, I need to change, I have to change, it was very hard. And I'll be brutally honest. I would say it was kind of post-op. I did feel depression. Yeah. I did feel a lot of anxiety, I felt a heck of a lot of anxiety,
Yeah.
right? Having undergone such an operation, it screws around with a lots of your head, right? You know, even my relationship with my wife was slightly different, right? My relationship with work, and I call it a relationship with work, it was, right?
Yeah.
For a long time, one could even say my first love was my work, was my job, right? Had to be different, right? I was longing for something. My heart said, literally and figuratively, if you will, that I had to make changes, right? But my head, my head said I had to make changes. My heart was saying, look, you know, you miss this, you want this, you yearn for this. So to answer your question, you know, did I know I need to make changes? Did I? Yes, I did, right? Did I do it? Not in the early days.
No.
So if I may, I guess what I did was, again, as I said, my work was really great about it. I had what, really 3 or just over 3 months to recuperate.
Yeah.
After which we started thinking about what to do next. We came to the conclusion that I need to change. I need to have a better lifestyle. So we came to a mutual agreement that I would move on.
Yeah.
But you know, they gave me a good long notice period, so I can take some time to think and work through what I had to do, which I'm hugely grateful for them for. And then over that period, and that was difficult as well. Now I've recuperated a bit. I'm back to, I wouldn't say my old self, but I'm mobile a bit more. So, and this was also during lockdown, right? So, you know, it was hard. It was doubly hard. But I appreciate my family more. We spent a lot more time together. You know, things like not being able to have breakfast with my wife and kids, having dinner with my wife and kids, having lunch with my wife and kids. What, you know, yes, lockdown was miserable for a multitude of reasons, but also I really liked lockdown. I might be the only one, I'm sorry to say, but because it gave me that closeness. No, it gave me the closeness with my family. And at that point, after having gone through what I needed that, right? But I also realized very quickly that I'm not a person who sits still. You know, we were even kind of pondering, could I do early retirement? Could I afford it? Could I do it? You know, leaving aside the affordability factor, the mental state of it, right? Could I cope with it, right? And the answer was no, I couldn't. I needed to do something, right? So that's when I knew, you know, some people will be fortunate because they know they've got ambitions career wise, they've got other career aspirations that they would like to do, whether it's becoming a teacher, whether it's you know, I didn't have any of that. So I was starting from a really low base because of, you know, I've enjoyed my past jobs and everything so much, right? Didn't have any time for anything else, right? So I came to a point where I was trying to start that new. I did seek help, right? You know, I had a great, I don't know how you'd refer to them, therapist, whatever you want to call it, right? But I also had a career coach that I turned to work through what next, what do I want to do, how do I want to do it, and I was really grateful because I had lots of support, right? And I was really grateful because my work had given me a set period of time where, you know, I could go and think through everything that I wanted to do. I've got, you know, so but I will again say then different forms of anxiety kicks in. So I now decided, I've gone through this thought process, I decided, yes, I do need to go back to work. IT is all I know, right? As much as I'd love to go into a head of IT, CTO-esque position, it's not going to be great for me. Spoke to different colleagues, ex-colleagues. Some people talk to me about client management. You know, Bahi, you'd be great at doing this. You'd be great at consulting. So but you know what? Then when I decided I wanted to do something, I was like, bang, right, send out the CV, get it. You know, so then I'm putting other forms of pressure on me, right? Because then you start to wonder, Christ, have I got enough money? How does this look? Do you know what I mean? You kind of, and it's
different
always that, yeah, but one has to take time for oneself. One has to sit there and go, is this right? And where am I headed? Right. And again, fortunately, I did get a job. Right. I left my previous organization. I think it was end of November 2020. Right. I started a new job in January 21, so earlier this year. Right. But even I started my new job. I'll apologize if any of my current colleagues are watching, but I went through a big period of, I didn't know whether this job was right for me. I didn't know whether I was good enough. I didn't know, I've never done client management. People used to throw terms at me, right? And I'd be like, what? Because I've never done that role. This was out of my comfort factor. Right. And then I had anxiety about that. Leaving aside and then I'd forgotten, right, about all the reasons why I was doing this. Right. It was my health. And then I got into a place again where I was working. I was then spending time questioning my role, questioning my worth, and I had to literally take moments where I'd go, what are you doing this for? Go back, reset. It's for my family. It's for me, right? It isn't about, this job is now about me and my sanity, right? And I've got a great boss. I've got a great organization I work for, where they do say to me, look, Bahi, my boss even tells me, Bahi, yes, right, if you need to go to the gym, go to the gym, right? Finish at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever it is, finish, go to the gym. And that is refreshing. That's hugely refreshing, right? And so I sit here now and I think through all of those things, that what should I be doing, right? I should look after my health. I should look after, I should enjoy time with my family, with my kids, my job has allowed me, my son has been having tutoring, and they've got clubs and everything like this, right? And I've been able to take him to those things, which I never in my previous job. And that is not a criticism of my role before, by the way, of the employer, but it was a criticism of my job. It's how I worked with it, right? I didn't allow myself that, so there's a lot has changed for me.
And looking back, because obviously hindsight's an amazing thing, and looking back, you obviously can see the mistakes you were making at the time and how much pressure you were putting on yourself, and the fact that your priorities might have been a bit skewed. But at the time, did you think that, or did you just think, well, I'm living this life where work is my priority, and that's just that?
Do you know what? I didn't think anything of it.
No.
I enjoyed my life. I had a bloody great life, right? Don't get me wrong, there was ups and downs in it, right? There were ups and downs in it, right? But if I reflect on it, we went on holidays. We had lovely holidays. I had an absolutely stunning girlfriend at the time, wife now. We were able to go out to theaters, try different restaurants. I even remember, me and a couple of close friends and my wife, right? We formed a supper group, as we called it, right? and what we did was, every month we'll try different top restaurants.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
So we went to the Ivy, we went to 34. We tried various, and it was brilliant. I could not, but at that time you don't think about or any of the consequences. You're living in the moment. And please look, one thing is, right, don't think that you have to reflect on every single thing. No, live in the moment. Definitely live in the moment. I can assure you, if things had gone horribly wrong, right, with my op, one couldn't turn around and go, oh, what if, right? If only Bahi did that. If only he did that, right? No, because I enjoyed it, right? And I still do. So sadly I didn't think like that.
Well, it's good though, like you say, there is, there's the line and the balance, and that balance is becoming harder now, just with everything that there is in life. And you know, kind of social pressures and pressures from so many just different angles, it's hard to get that balance between everything. It's like you're juggling so many different things. And I was going to ask, do you think, because obviously the whole result of that was ultimately burnout and, you know, your lifestyle, and do you think that burnout is becoming worse, or do you think companies are putting things in place now to try and, because I know, I mean, I did a mental health first aid course for my company this week. And I know, you know, there was so many other people on the course, and I thought, okay, so companies are really taking the time to kind of think about people's mental health and their, you know, well-being outside of work. But then at the same time, we are seeing increasing numbers of people that, you know, are stressed. So it's hard for me to think, where is it going wrong?
So look, you use the phrase burnout, right? Would I say I had that? I still probably wouldn't classify it as that. Okay, possibly because I'm stupid and I don't fully understand what burnout means, right? It could be that. I think you know, mental health, everyone goes on about it, right? I think it's very important. But I think it's still a bit of a taboo subject, right? People don't want to. I'm open about it, right? As I said, look, I've already, you know, whoever watches this, they don't know me, whatever. I've already said I've had help, right? I've had therapists. I've gone and spoken to people. I've had a coach, right? And that's why I say I'm a fortunate one. Okay, I think it's highly, highly important. So when you turn around and to answer you specifically about our organizations taking this seriously, well, look, the first time I was ever introduced to mental health, right, and to a therapist was when I was at a hedge fund called Edgerton Capital, right? There we had a doctor, you know, who came in to the organization. You spent time with her, and I'm going back, by the way. I'm probably going back 12 years ago, right? When mental health wasn't even a topic, right? But so Edgerton were really forward thinking in that sense, and I was grateful for them because they introduced me to it. I saw her name was Dr. Clark. I saw her. She was great. She helped me through a lot of things. I would even turn around and say I was at that organization for nearly 7.5 years, and partly I would say it was because of her guiding me through and helping me through, right? Nowadays, yes, mental health is a big thing. My current organization, we do a lot. We do an awful lot around it, right? You know, I've got an app on my phone, the Unwind app, right, which talks me through various things and helps me. We talk about it very frequently, right? But the one thing is, look, the organizations can give you all of these tools and everything, but you have to use it. You have to recognize it, right? But also, and I might say something which not a lot of people might appreciate, but look, please don't take the piss out of it. Excuse my language here, but please don't you know, don't use that as an excuse, because then you're not helping the person who is really going through it, right? You know, people sometimes use stress, right, as I'm going to get some time off. Right? Please don't use it like that, right? Stress is a serious thing, right? And I apologize if I've offended already. I hope not. But you know, this is one of the things we probably don't talk about, right? But for me, I know people who've gone through stress. I've gone through anxiety, right? I thrive on stress. I don't see stress as much, right? But I know I've gone through anxiety. I know what that feels like. So so I do use some of the tools that work provides. But I use more of my own tools that I've had in the past, and I keep those going for me. I still have a touch point with my, again, let's call her my therapist, right? Whatever you want to call her, my shrink, right? I still have a touch point with her every quarter, every 6 months, depending on whether I'm having a good day or a bad day or a good week, good month, whatever it is, right? It gives me direction. It helps me through my relationship with my kids, my relationship with my work, my relationship with my wife, right? And out of that, by the way, you know, somebody said to me the other, I think it was the other week, it was like, kind of, can you prioritize, you know, you, your wife, your kids, and your work, right? And I was like, yeah, my kids and my wife first, right? And then, because I still enjoy work, I still love work, I probably put work next, and then I put me last, kind of thing. By the way, that was even after I've gone through this ordeal, right? And I'm still putting me last, right? And he turned around to me and he said, that's so wrong, Bahi. That is so wrong. He said, you've got to put you first, right? Even before your wife and kids, you have to be first, right? If you are well and you are coping, then you can help them and help them through stuff, right? Then comes your wife and children, right? Then comes work, right? But again, between your wife and kids and your work comes you again, in some respects, because you've got to reflect upon you and the impact. You know, if you're going through a bad time with your kids, maybe, or with your wife, maybe, whatever, or your partner, right? Sorry, right? Whatever it may be, you need to rethink, what is it doing to me?
Yeah, it affects you. Yeah, everything. And on my mental health course this week, that was the first rule, actually, because when you think about physical health, if you were in a traumatic event, they say, you know, you can't help someone until you've helped yourself. So on a plane, you have to put your oxygen on first, so then before you go and help anyone. And he said, you need to apply that to mental health, because if your stress container is too full and overflowing, you can't help or have a good effect on other people. So I completely agree that as selfish, and I think as humans, we hate to be, you know, to say out loud, oh, I think you need to put yourself first, and we hate to have that thought. But in reality, if you look at physical you know, situations, that's what you would do. So why not do that from sort of a mental well-being situation as well? But I obviously, this whole series that we do is about extraordinary people inspiring change, and I know you spoke about all the many people across the years that have helped you, but who is that one extraordinary person who helped you throughout all of this?
I wouldn't. Would I say one? I wouldn't say one. Right. I think. I think it would be a few. But. And you know, one could turn around and go, oh, you should turn around and say, I don't know, your surgeon or your cardiologist, or those people who recognize it. But I mean, they're a given, right, in some respects. But I think the top extraordinary person for me is actually my wife, in some respects, because, do you know what, I didn't even, let's be honest about this, I didn't even see or realize the impact it had on her, right? Because I was still work. Oh yeah, this is, I was like, yeah, it's happening, you know, you just get on with it, right? I didn't realize how big it was, right? But she did, and she coped with it without even showing me, without even telling me, right? So I would say her, really. Also, you know, I spent, you know, I was very fortunate, right? Because the organization I worked for, I had private medical health. You know, they gave me as much time off as I needed, right? So I'm hugely thankful for them, right? And if that was one person, then I'd say they too were extraordinary, right? But I am hugely thankful for them. But, you know, if you look at me and my kind of story, look, from that moment when I came back from half-term holiday, right? Came back from Dubai, getting seen by my doctor, getting in front of my, I say my cardiologist, but the cardiologist, right? And then having had the op, it was weeks, right? I was fortunate because that happened, right? And it was quick. But do you know what? Coming back to your extraordinary person and, you know, things, my wife had to deal with her own emotions, my kids' emotions. I've got, at the time, my daughter would have been 5, my son would have been 8, right? 6 and 8 or whatever, right? But she had to deal with them because I wasn't there, right? Because I'm in hospital, I'm, you know, having tests, you know, what was their emotions like not having dad around for, again, I was fortunate because I only spent what, 4 or 5 days in hospital, right? It was a great quick turnaround. You know, but she had to cope with all of that. She had to come in and see me. She also had a job to do, right? Her employer wasn't great. So, you know, on a kind of converse situation, right? The person that she was working for, her boss's boss was great about stuff. He was like, you know, great, you know, look after, how's everything going? Sadly, her boss at the time wasn't great like that. But do you know what? You need that support. That's another thing. You know, you go back to, you know, mental health and everything. I think managers, again, if I may, I think managers need to be taught how to deal with mental health. I think they need to be taught, right? It doesn't come naturally. But your point was extraordinary people. Yeah, I think if I had to say, it would be my wife. Yeah.